Good evening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 2021 session of Galactic Terrors, where we bring you strange tales, weird horror, dark humor, and all sorts of other oddities and grotesqueries from the known universe. And one of these days, Carol, I am really going to write a script for this opening little monologue.
No, I think it's way better that we sit here and prove that we are the oddities that we bring to you. Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's cool.
So welcome. I am Jim Chambers, and my co-host is...
I'm Carol Geisander. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to see you. Thank you for returning to Galactic Terrors. If you've been here before, if this is your first time checking out our reading series, thank you for joining us. We hope you'll come back for more. We have an outstanding roster of readers tonight. Going to hear some great stories, different types of thriller, horror, comedy, and all sorts of cool stuff tonight from Lara Frater, Rick Poldark, Sarah Tantlinger, and we have a very special new kind of feature for Galactic Terrors, courtesy of Lou Rara. Those of you who follow Galactic Terrors may know Lou is the mad genius behind all of our really cool video intros and animations and things like that. And Lou wanted to do something totally different with his reading. He was going to read with us, and so he has put together something that is very difficult to describe, but is, I promise, going to creep you out and change your opinion of a common delicacy for the rest of your life. I can't say more than that without spoilers. So we hope you'll stick around for that toward the end of the program. And for now, I think, Carol, we were telling me just the other day, you're keeping track of the countdown.
I am. I'm counting. It's only 115 days to Halloween. You know, that's pretty close. So, you know, though I was going to wear orange, you know, because of that, but I thought, all right, I'm going to save that.
Yes, it's practically right around the corner. And I've seen people posting on Facebook already that they're scouting out the traditional shops where Halloween decorations and things appear, and they're not there yet, apparently, at least according to a post I saw the other day, but I'm sure they'll be there before Labor Day.
We may have a sale by Labor Day. Yeah, that'll be cool. Yeah.
Awesome. And something else that we were talking about recently, just for those of you who may be interested, the HWA scholarships are currently open for applications. They are open until August 1st. The HWA offers a variety of scholarships to assist writers looking to pursue a career as a writer of horror fiction, nonfiction, or poetry. We also offer an endowment to libraries to expand their young adult reading programs. And there's a lot to support writers. We offer some other scholarships throughout the year, such as the Scholarship from Hell, which is a trip to StokerCon and access to the Horror University workshops that are presented there and things like that. If you're interested in that, you can drop by horror.org for more information and start filling out that application, though, if you're going to apply for one, because you've only got a few weeks left.
Excellent. And speaking of only a week or so coming up, there's an event coming up. It's not an official HWA New York event. However, everybody who's participating this time is a member of HWA New York. The Rooftop Readings are a series run by our member Randy Dawn on the third Tuesdays. It's at Ample Hills Creamery in Gowanus, Brooklyn. And it's a cool series of readings that are up on the roof. This month, Jim Chambers guest MCs with readings from the anthology that he edited and has just released, Under Twin Suns, Alternate Histories of the Yellow Sign. And there were readings from authors who have contributed stories, including Mark Abbott, Carol Geisander, that's me, and Kathleen Shiner. So it's at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, July 20th. You must buy your tickets in advance for the Rooftop Readings. But the really cool thing, the tickets are only $10 and you get a double scoop of the most fabulous ice cream that you probably have ever had. So I highly recommend the ice cream, and I like the mango. That's my take. I'm thinking orange already, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, when I was there in June, I had the I forget exactly what it's called, but it's sort of a deconstructed Rice Krispie treat ice cream. It's like marshmallow ice cream and Rice Krispies, and it was really mind-blowingly good. So if you like ice cream, and they do have non-ice cream desserts if ice cream is not your thing.
Yeah, and vegan as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that's why I like the mango, because it's very simple, but it was tasty.
So I hope you can maybe join us there in a couple of weeks. And Carol, I promised you an extra scoop for putting Under Twin Suns behind you there on your video feed.
Which side? That side. There it is. Go. Yeah, right. Yeah. There we go.
So, but thank you.
Cool.
All right.
That's a lot of fun.
So I think we'll jump into our readers here in just a minute. Just a couple of the nuts and bolts kinds of things. Thank you for joining us on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you are watching. If you're on YouTube, please do please do subscribe. Apparently, these things help keep YouTube in business. And so we'd like to do everything we can. We know how much YouTube struggles to, make a go of it in these tough times, owned by a struggling parent company like Google. And so the more that we can do to help them out, the longer we'll have this venue for our reading series. So please like and subscribe. Consider joining our newsletter. I'll throw the URL up here for a minute. And Carol likes to point out we will not spam you. I think we send this out twice a month.
Twice a month, yeah.
And basically just to announce the next reading, and then closer to the date as a reminder, just, hey, we're going to be reading in a couple of days. And so come on over.
Yeah. And it's a good way to keep track of the links as well.
Yes.
So.
Awesome. All right. So shall we get on to the fun stuff?
I think that's a great idea.
Excellent. All right. Our first reader tonight is Lara Frater. She is an author and librarian. She writes horror, sci-fi, and dystopia fiction, nonfiction about being a fat woman living in a thin world, essays about library science, and poetry. Her short stories have appeared in Tales of the Canyon of the Damned and Necrotic Tissue. She's the author of the zombie series End of the Line. She also wrote the nonfiction book Fat Chicks Rule. Her essay, Fat Heroines in Chicklit, appeared in the Fat Studies Reader. She lives in Queens with her husband, author Jon Frater, godchildren, and a herd of friends, cats, a dog, and pillbugs. She's currently working on a novel about demonic bugs and will soon appear in something completely different, an essay about the Queens neighborhood Kew Gardens in Once Upon a Time in Kew Gardens. All right, so join us in welcoming Lara.
Hi all, I've been reading my short story, The Real Estate Market, which appeared in Tales of the Canyon of the Damned. I think it's number 19. In the interest of time, I'm going to have to skip the first 2 pages, but the basic sum of those pages is that the Tanner family, Rob and Lisa, have 2 small children and 1 on the way, and they live in a very tiny apartment. They've been searching for a house for months without success, and Rob comes across an ad for a house that seems too good to be true and surprisingly in their price range. The couple is skeptical, but still come to see the house, and this is where we're going to start. "Oh my God," my wife said when we pulled up to the front of it. I felt the same way. Not only were in Dix Hills proper, this house was bigger than any house in our price range. It was a huge light red brick colonial with no signs of cracked paint. It had 3 stories with a slanted roof and chimney. The house wasn't next to a rendering plant, and there was a decent amount of space between us and our neighbors. It was weird, but it smelled faintly of beef. I guess someone was having a barbecue, even though it was fall. Not a bad smell. If we ever got a house, I look forward to firing up the grill in the summer. The neighboring houses were also gorgeous and of similar size and shape. The street was quiet except for a gardener working on some bushes on a neighboring house. I caught his eye, and he made the sign of the cross before he went back to his work. Ignoring his odd behavior, I turned back to Lisa. I assumed the woman in front of the house was Pam because she wore a red blazer with a big name tag that read, "My name is Pam." "Hello." She put on the fakest smile I ever seen. I figure it must be tiring to smile like that all day. "You must be Mr. and Mrs. Tanner." I'm Pam from Red River Realty. Glad you could stop by. This place is gorgeous. My wife still looks stunned, and please call me Lisa. Wait till you see the inside. You'll love it. Pam led us past an iron gate with an enormous lock. The gate was open, and we walked about 20 steps to a covered porch that had a shiny crystal light fixture above it. Above the walkway was a large front yard. Pam opened the door that led to a foyer with polished wood floors. Past the foyer, to the left, a staircase led up to the second floor. To my right, a huge sitting room held a fireplace. Next to the sitting room, a giant living room with wood floors looked like the perfect place for entertaining guests. Directly in front of us was a long hallway. I rubbed my finger on the staircase, not a hint of dust. I smelled the air. All I could smell was beef. I was ready to barbecue right now, whatever season. Come this way. We passed the staircase. There was a closet underneath. I wasn't a contractor, but so far I couldn't see any flaws. I reached out to touch the knob. Before I could, Pam grabbed my hand. It's just a big closet. Let's see it. I expected mold, which I knew was hard to get rid of. I didn't want my children in a mold-filled house. Pam smiled her big, fake, rosy smile and opened the door. It was a huge closet, big enough to be a room. The beef smell was stronger here, and there appeared to be brown paint all over the wall, but not a hint of mold or mildew. Sorry, we're just doing some painting. Pam slammed the door. I hadn't smelled paint. Next to the closet was another door. Here's the basement. This time she voluntarily opened the door. We could look at that at the end of the tour. That's it. The basement's got to be a swamp or a toxic waste dump, except I didn't smell anything but beef. Some neighbor must be having a massive party. Basement is full and furnished. It has a family and rec room, a full-size bath, laundry room, and even space for an office. She led us past the hallway into a large dining room with a crystal chandelier in the center. There was a kitchen towards the back. Kitchen is very modern. I want to show you something lovely. We walked into the kitchen, almost as big as my first apartment. In the back, a spiral staircase and a big picturesque window made for a nice focal point. A huge backyard held an in-ground pool covered in plastic. Lush evergreen trees and multiple colored oaks and maple trees surrounded the yard. It made the backyard kind of forest-like. It was a beautiful sight. I never imagined owning a house like this. Lisa and I figured we might get a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath in a nice upper to middle class neighborhood. The yard covers an entire acre. The pool needs to be cleaned and filled, but it is structurally sound. I can recommend a good pool company. This stairwell and the one in the front go to the second and third floors. She climbed, and as we followed. We got to the second floor and yet again greeted by polished wood floors and a big picture window, through which I could see the picturesque yard and pool. The floor made no sounds of creaking of loose or rotted wood. 3 bedrooms and 1 full bath on this floor, and there are 2 bedrooms on the third floor, although it used to be 3. The previous owners made their master bedroom into a suite and put in a jacuzzi. All right, I had enough. Pam and Lisa looked startled, but I didn't care. This is too good to be true. What the hell is wrong with this house? Rob, don't be rude. No, Lisa, I can't help it. This house is amazing. There's nothing wrong with it, but there has to be. I assure you, there's nothing wrong with this house. It's been checked by contractors. Obviously, you can have your own come in during escrow. Pam didn't lose her cheery demeanor. Come on, Pam. You know something's wrong here. If I go next door, I bet they'll tell me they paid a couple of mil for their house. Pam's eternal smile became a frown. Come this way. We followed her down the spiral staircase into the massive kitchen. The kitchen had a large combo fridge and freezer, but also had a large chest freezer next to it. She opened the freezer and pulled out what looked like a roast wrapped in plastic. Pam, I said, confused. Now nothing made sense. You wanted to see what was wrong. I'm going to show you what's wrong. I was going to wait until the end of the tour. We followed her to the front of the house, to the staircase we first saw when we entered. At the second floor, we met a weird sight. Between the second and third floor was another door, 5 feet behind a railing. Strange looking, but it looked like someone added an extra closet. Pam jumped over. I followed, and we both helped Lisa. So the house had a weird mezzanine that might bring the value down, slowly not down to our price range. This area smelled especially strong of beef, and it wasn't coming from Pam's roast. Pam pulled out a key from her pocket, unwrapped the meat, then unlocked and opened the door. An intense wind came out of the closet with a roar. Inside the closet looked like it was filled with thousands of strobe lights. Among the roar of wind, I could hear a humming, then a loud growl, finally a screaming voice. Meat! Pam threw the chuck into the closet. The action happened so quickly, but I couldn't hear the roast hit the floor before Pam slammed the door. What the fuck was that? Lisa said, bewildered. I looked back at the closed closet door and reached for the handle, but Pam slapped my hand away. Don't open the door unless you have to. Otherwise, it gets greedy and demanding, and you'll have to feed it more often and more than just meat, if you catch my drift. She pulled the key out and locked the door. I don't understand. Lisa still looked bewildered. What's that? We don't know what's in there, and no one's tried to find out, although there are rumors someone tried a long time ago. As you can hear, it wants meat. I've been feeding it for the last couple of months. It needs a couple of pounds of beef once a week, and there won't be any trouble. It could be cheap meat. I know a place that sells it wholesale. That's it? Pam looked at me confused. Well, even though the door is locked, occasionally it opens, screams, and blood comes pouring out. It's done this every time I show the house, but not with you. Why, it's been quiet this whole time. It must like you. And the brown paint in the downstairs closet, dry blood? She nodded. It leaks sometimes. You'll have to keep that closet empty. What happened to the previous owners? Pam didn't respond. Come on, Pam. You already told us everything. The last couple lived here 50 years with no trouble. I think they got senile and forgot to feed it. They never found the bodies. The daughter originally rented out the house, but none of the tenants could live with having to feed this thing and the screaming and cleaning up the blood. So foundation is strong, no leaks, warm in winter, cool in summer, no radon, not on the national priority list for cleanup, I asked. Yes, and I'll be happy to have your contractor come over and test the place. You're not going to find a nicer house than this one at such a deeply discounted price in such a wonderful neighborhood. I have a list of people who can work on the house and are familiar with the issue. All we have to do is buy meat and throw it into the closet, which occasionally spits blood and screams, but that's it? Yes. How come you've been able to sell this house in the past? I'm sure someone would still buy it despite this closet. Oh, there were some unsavory individuals who expressed interest, and some others who really don't fit into this neighborhood's lifestyle. We really like to keep the neighborhood nice. You seem like a good family. She looked at the closet. It seems to like you. Sorry. It probably knows you will take care of this house. Come on. Pam's fake rosy smile returned. It's very inexpensive for such a small inconvenience. I looked at my wife. I thought about the entire family squashed in a 2-bedroom apartment, then thought about us relaxing by the pool. I thought about the cost of higher taxes, meat once a week, and the cost of putting up walls around the closet to keep the kids out. We might have to be house poor until Lisa went back to work, but I think we can manage it. We'd have to find someone willing to throw meat in when we went on vacation. We could always sell the house when we got older, or if the thing in the closet got too much of a nuisance. What do you think, Lisa? We'll take it. Thank you very much.
Oh my goodness, that's hysterical. You know the first thing that comes to my mind that I have to ask you, where's the beef, right? That's so much fun. Okay, I'm dying to know what inspired the idea for this story.
Okay.
It's fantastic.
It was a dream. It was based on a dream. I had a dream about being in a house that was my house, but it wasn't really my house. When I was looking for a house, so I had a dream that I opened up this closet and there was a monster in there demanding meat. And so I just kind of made up a story around it.
Yeah. I don't know. Does this make it a buyer's market, a seller's market, a butcher's market? I don't know.
When I wrote it, it was I believe it was a seller's market when I wrote it. Because we were looking for a house, and it was really hard to find something that was not super expensive.
Okay, that's cool.
And we were also I would see ads that are like, it just seemed the houses just seemed too good to be true. You would see something and it'd be incredibly cheap with like 1,000,000 bedrooms and all new appliances ready to move
Right.
in, but you knew something was wrong.
Yes, yes. When you find the prison cells in the basement,
Yeah,
I've seen some of those pictures on the interwebs. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
And there was a
cool.
jail on sale in Vermont.
I saw that. I
Yeah,
saw that. I think it'd make a really nice writer's retreat. You don't get out of
yeah,
your cell until you hit your word count, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So, all right, I have a different question for you. I'm really intrigued with the idea of being a writer and a librarian. So, tell me, what do you do in the library? Are you
Oh,
in fiction, or do you do research, or do you
no,
do office? What do you do?
I'm actually a medical librarian.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
So I do actually am the person in charge of the databases to make sure the databases work, but I also
ah,
do like reference services and
cool,
I work in a college, so I deal with students.
cool.
Um, so I do a little bit of everything, but mostly I'm in charge of making sure that the students can get to their databases.
That's important. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. The data is important. Yeah, very
yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's neat. So, I'm also kind of fond of Tales of Canyon of the Damned. It's fun that we've had an episode with a bunch of New York people in it as well. And
Yeah.
he just keeps bringing these out. Daniel's great. They're
Yeah, he's great.
terrific.
He's awesome. He's like
Yeah.
I've appeared in his in it like 3 times already.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got to go look for the other ones. Well, after this story,
Yeah.
I want to read some more. Yeah. Now, tell me about the rest of your writing. Is most of the fiction type stuff, is that mostly humorous, or is this an exception for this really
This
cool house? Or
Okay, so some of it the zombie stuff is very serious. It's not
okay,
humorous, but I'm writing one now about demonic bugs and like New York is like was hit by an earthquake and all these bugs became demonic and these people they're exterminators and paranormal investigators are getting together to try to defeat the bugs. So I've been
okay.
working on that. It's not coming along as well as I'd hope, but I'm working on it.
So, but what are pill bugs? You say you have pill bugs.
Oh, so my godchild, they have pill bugs in in the basement. They
Mhm.
like to find pill bugs and they put it in a little thing of dirt. I just thought it was very funny.
Okay. Okay, that's
Yeah.
fun. Did that relate to the story in any way?
No. Oh, they
Okay.
liked the story when I first wrote it about the meat house. So we were looking for a house. I go, "Do we gonna go find a meat house?"
Yes, yes. Oh, that's really fun.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I'm enjoying this. Now I'm also curious to hear about some of your other work with the fat gals, because that's a really important topic that nobody talks about. So thank
Yeah.
you for putting some stuff out there about that.
So not to
You know.
completely get rid of say my age, but about in
Hmm.
2005, I put a book out called Fat Chicks Rule.
Hmm.
It's kind of outdated, but you could still buy it. It's on Amazon. It's only in print. There's
Hmm.
no ebooks. And essentially, it was like because I've always been big, and it's very hard sometimes to navigate the world at this size. And I know
Yes.
people who are bigger than I am, and they even have even more trouble between like even finding jobs, finding comfortable clothes, being treated with respect at the doctors.
Hmm.
So I thought this was like a really good book to write about. Um, I'm not as active as I once was, but that's because I have other projects. But I do
You're a little
keep my
busy.
I do
Yeah.
I actually have a second. I have 2 Twitters. I have one for horror stuff, and I have one for like politics and fat stuff. So that one
Okay.
is actually on Fat Chicks Rule.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to keep a blog, but it was harder. It was hard to keep up with it.
It's hard to do multiple social media
Yeah,
streams, isn't
it
it?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's still a really important issue to me
Yeah.
because I see so many people. I see so many stories about women, especially fat women and fat men too,
Mhm.
pretty much getting disrespected just for their size.
Yes, I've been much larger at different points in my life when I had 2 kids and people just make assumptions when they see you.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah.
And, two interesting things in the chat. We have people loving your Catzilla T-shirt, but the
Oh,
thing I
really?
have to tell you, I almost wore that exact same shirt tonight, and
That's funny.
this was on top of the pile, so I put this one on instead. We would have been
Oh,
cat
that would have
twinsies,
been funny. Yeah, I got this. My birthday was recently, and my friend got this for my birthday.
Okay,
And I
okay.
also have a cat on my lap.
Oh,
He stayed on my lap the entire reading.
hello, there's mine. Good.
So
And
this is Mr. William.
okay. We
Yeah,
have one quick question from
yeah.
Brian who wants to know. So we talked about this a little bit. He wants to know, do dreams give you most of your inspiration? Or if not, what does?
I've had some stories. Most of it, I had some stories inspired by dreams. But most of it, I don't know. Sometimes it comes to me like ideas will just click. The zombie
Mhm.
stories, I always kind of wanted to write a zombie series, and it kind of just, I started writing it for NaNoWriMo, and it just kind of took
Right.
off, and I ended up writing like 3 novels in the series, although
Okay.
only 2 are available right now.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's cool. Okay. That
yeah.
sounds really intriguing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we're
Oh,
going to
you're
ask you
welcome.
to come back at the end. We'll talk about those things that you have coming up. That'll be really fun.
Cool.
So thank you, Lara.
You're
And what
welcome.
I'd like to introduce our next reader, an active member of the Horror Writers Association and the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. Rick Poldark writes science fiction, fantasy, and horror for Severed Press and Lucifer Verlag. He also likes to travel, brew his own ale, and play D&D whenever possible. Let's all welcome Rick Poldark.
Hi, this takes place with the paleontologist Peter, big game hunter Jason, and a Zahaki lizard man named Genga trapped in a chamber of the Temple of the Simian King. Jason immediately strode to the opposite wall, running his fingers along it. There's a seam. He traced it with his fingers. There's a secret door here. He looked down at about waist level. He bent over, inspecting the stone. He blew dust out of a small hole. This looks like a keyhole. Peter inspected the cave paintings on the wall to the right. He carefully wiped the dust away with his hand, causing some of it to go airborne. He sneezed suddenly and loudly, startling Genga, who recoiled. The painting in the middle clearly depicted the Simian King. The one to its right depicted a female, as featured with large bare breasts and a less muscled body. The painting to the left depicted a smaller ape, lighter in color, clad in bamboo armor, likely a juvenile. It held what appeared to be a torch. Peter figured it was the fire of youth or something like that. He looked underneath the paintings. Directly below each was a small tablet representation of the painting above it, held fast in crude metal brackets. Under each tablet was a keyhole. I found 3 more keyholes, said Peter, trying to tug the tablets free of their brackets. They seem to unlock these tablets. Jason was now standing over the large ape-like corpse in the corner. Although its frame was large, its flesh had atrophied and its skin was taut from desiccation. We have a dead body here. Peter's head jerked in its direction. Is this going to be a problem? Jason closed his eyes, focusing. The death orb illuminated under his shirt, casting an icy blue light. His eyes opened. No, it's dead, as in the non-moving variety. Peter turned to find Genga inspecting the altar in the center of the room. The Zahaki was particularly interested in the massive hourglass sitting on top. He picked it up, shaking it, shifting the black sand sitting at the bottom. He made to turn it over, but Peter stopped him. Genga's body stiffened. Peter shook his head. No, not yet. Genga placed the hourglass back onto the altar. He produced his crystal orb. Peter lay his right palm on it, reestablishing the neural link. Not yet. Starting the timer may trigger something. I want to know everything we're dealing with before we set anything in motion. Genga didn't answer. Rather, he backed away, bowing slightly in a gesture of deference. Peter clapped his hands, rubbing his palms together. Okay, let's think about this for a moment. Jason shot him a look. Peter noticed. What? Oh, God, said Jason. You're actually enjoying this. Peter ignored the remark. He stepped back, surveying the room, his mind processing the materials before him. I'm thinking we need to free the stone tablets under the cave paintings. Yeah, but what do we do with the tablets? Asked Jason. I think we need to unlock this door here. Peter nodded. Yes, but we don't just find the key. When Jason answered his statement with a quizzical look, Peter chuckled. We'll have to free these tablets, which we'll then use to reveal the key to that door. Trust me, I know how these things work. Genga was inspecting the top of the altar. He ran his clawed fingers across the top. Peter saw this and joined him. He looked down and saw 3 depressions matching the size of the stone tablets locked up under the cave paintings. Here, we have to place the tablets in these slots. That should reveal the key to unlock the secret door. Jason looked at the altar and nodded. He then looked around the room. Got it. What are we looking for? Anything that would reveal a key for one of the tablets, said Peter. They each split up, searching a different part of the room. Jason stood over the corpse of the ape man, studying it. Genga went to investigate the statue on the pedestal. Peter walked over to get a closer look at the fireball. Peter studied the fireball. This fireball is empty. No logs, no twigs, or any kind of discernible fuel. Yet it burns. Maybe it's a magic fire, quipped Jason. Maybe it is, said Peter. He placed his right hand out over the fire, palm facing down, and slowly lowered it. He felt the heat on his palm. It's definitely hot. He looked around, patting himself down as if searching for something. He looked over at Jason. Let me borrow your knife. Jason looked over his shoulder, arching an eyebrow. Why? I want to see if this fire is hot. Jason turned away from the curious corpse and handed Peter his hunting knife, handle first. Peter took it and placed the large blade into the fire. Within seconds, the blade began to glow red. Peter removed the blade and quickly touched it with the tip of his index finger. He pulled it away quickly. It's definitely hot. He handed the knife back to Jason. Genga was surveying the statue and the pedestal. Peter turned to see him touch the small figure, and it shifted, but it didn't move off the pedestal. Hold on a minute, Genga. Genga backed away, clawed hands up. Peter crossed the room to get a better look. The statue was squat with curvy features. It appeared to depict large breasts and hips. It's a fertility statue, said Peter. Many cultures have them. He cocked his head sideways, studying how it sat on the pedestal. After Genga touched it, it sat crooked, and something protruded from the bottom. The protrusion appeared to disappear into the pedestal. What do you have there? Asked Jason. Either it's going to lead us to a key or it's going to trigger some booby trap. Jason came over to have a closer look. Looks like the statue comes off, but it has to be lifted up. Peter wiped sweat from his brow that wasn't entirely due to the heat. His heart pounded inside his chest. Okay, here goes nothing. He looked to Jason for any objection, and the hunter offered none. Genga just watched them both, standing back. Peter reached out, grabbed the small fertility statue in his hands, and slowly pulled it up. He winced, anticipating anything from flying spears to poison gas. The statue lifted off the pedestal, revealing a long protuberance underneath its base. When Peter cleared the pedestal, he laughed out loud as he recognized the long-toothed structure beneath the statue. Ladies and gentlemen, the first key. Jason snatched the statue out of Peter's hands, inverting it so the key pointed up. Great, let's open the secret door. He walked over to the door, lined the key up at the keyhole, using the statue as a handle, and attempted to insert the key. He tried to push, pulled it out, studied the key and then the hole, and tried to force the key in again. It's not working. I told you, Peter smirked. He took the key from Jason and walked over to the 3 cave paintings. He stood in front of the one depicting the female ape. I bet it unlocks this tablet. He turned the statue in his hands, lining the key up with the keyhole beneath the stone tablet depicting the simian female. He slid the key in and turned. The metal clamps holding the tablet snapped open, and Peter removed the tablet. That's one tablet. Brilliant, gasped Jason. Thank you, said Peter, obviously pleased with himself. He walked the tablet over to the altar and lined it up with the slot opposite the cave painting of the simian female. It fit perfectly. 1 down, 2 to go. They all started looking around the room again. Genga was particularly interested in the giant hourglass filled with the black sand, but he didn't dare touch it. Peter looked between the corpse crumpled in the corner and the apparently magical fire. We have a corpse, a fire, he looked at Genga, and an hourglass. He looked back at the cave paintings, studying them. The young one is holding a torch, said Jason. That must have something to do with the fire. Maybe we need to make a torch. They looked around the room. There's nothing used as a torch, said Peter. No wood. Jason snapped his fingers. He ripped the right sleeve off his shirt and wrapped it around the blade of his hunting knife. He walked over to the fireball and shot Peter a dubious glance. Peter nodded. Do it. Jason placed the blade wrapped in fabric into the fire. His shirt sleeve ignited. He pulled it out and held it up. Okay, now what? Hold it in front of the painting of the youth, said Peter. Jason nodded and stepped in front of the painting. He held the torch up. Now what? Peter got right in front of the painting, investigating it up close. What are you doing? Asked Jason. I'm looking for hidden writing. Peter pored over the cave wall, but there were no hidden messages revealed by the torchlight. Jason adjusted his grip on the knife handle as the fabric burned away, falling away from the blade. Hurry, it's burning out. Peter stepped back, getting a different perspective on the painting of the ape youth. I don't see anything. Jason let the charred sleeve fall off the blade to the stone floor where the fire extinguished, leaving behind a small puff of black smoke. That's it. Want me to make another one? Hold off, said Peter, scratching the stubble on his chin contemplatively. I need to figure this one out. While you do that, I'll try and figure out the other clue. Jason stepped in front of the center painting depicting the Simian King. He scratched his jaw, deep in thought. There's a corpse and a giant hourglass. Nothing in the paintings indicates time. He walked back over to the corpse and squatted on his haunches. He inspected the ape warrior's armor made from bamboo. He fingered the individual shafts, searching for one that resembled a key. Peter momentarily regarded the corpse, but he saw Jason searching it, so he turned his attention to the hourglass. Time, he muttered to himself, the passage of time. Jason stood up and moved the corpse. It was surprisingly light, after who knows how many decades or centuries of desiccation. There was no key behind the body. He stood back, stroking his stubble, deep in thought. There's something wrong with his jaw. It looks crooked. Peter, lost in his own ruminations, ignored the observation. Jason unsheathed his hunting knife and slid it into the ape's mouth. It hit something hard inside. He smirked and pushed the knife in deeper, twisting the blade. He pried the mouth open, revealing sharp canine teeth, and reached inside. He pulled out a metal key. I've got it! Peter was jerked out of his private calculations. When he saw his friend holding the key, he smiled. Nice work. Jason brought the key over to the painting of the Simian King and inserted it into the keyhole beneath the corresponding tablet. He turned the key, and the metal brackets holding the tablet below snapped open. He grabbed the tablet and held it up. Eureka! Put it in the middle slot on the altar, said Peter, allowing his friend to do the honors. Jason strode triumphantly over to the altar and placed the tablet with the carving of the Simian King in the center slot. Perfect fit. That leaves one more key for one more tablet, said Peter. The only clues remaining are the fire and the hourglass. Peter and Jason stood over the hourglass. They each studied it from a different angle while Genga looked on. Peter wondered how intelligent this thinking lizard man actually was, as he didn't offer much in the way of help in solving the puzzles. Time, said Jason, something the young have plenty of. Peter looked him dead in the eye. Do you think we should turn the hourglass over? I think we have to, said Jason. It's a big hourglass. Maybe there's a key in the sand at the bottom. I just hope it doesn't set off a trap, said Peter. It's not connected to any mechanism, said Jason, lifting it off the altar. Yeah, but that doesn't rule out magic, said Peter. I don't think we have any other options, said Jason, unless you have any other ideas. Peter shook his head. Go ahead, do it. Jason sighed deeply, steeling himself, and turned the hourglass over as Peter grimaced and Genga cringed. The black sand began to run down. Jason placed it back on the altar and stepped away. They waited as the sand fell. Do you really think this is going to take an hour? Asked Jason. Possibly, said Peter. That's a long time to wait, said Jason. Meanwhile, the girls are in danger. Suddenly, Genga lunged forward, grabbed the hourglass, and smashed it on the ground. The glass shattered, and the black sand spilled out onto the stone floor. What the hell are you doing? Shouted Jason, reprimanding the lizard man. Peter pointed at the broken time instrument on the floor. Look! He squatted down, sifted through the sand, and produced the key. He stood using the altar for support and held the key up. The final key. And then it continues past that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rick. That was great.
I figure I always do gory scenes, so let me do one of my Dungeons and Dragons-y kind of puzzle scenes.
Right. Yeah, that was cool. It sort of gets into a little bit of the mythology of your novel and the whole setting. I love the Simian King. That's really cool. And I'm going to jump right into a question from the audience because I was kind of wondering the same thing myself. Where to go? There we go. James Glenn asks, what was your inspiration for your Primordial series? Ray Harryhausen, Land of the Lost. And some of the stuff you were describing, I have a Ray Harryhausen art book, and some of his sketches that were just done not for the movies or, anything particular or that were behind the scenes are so in sync with what you're describing. And so that's why I was curious. I could totally see a connection there.
I was born in the 70s, so Land of the Lost, definitely. Indiana Jones, some of the more cinematic stuff, and some of the old pulp fiction, of the hero on the island, and the dinosaurs and the ape men, and some of the more supernatural elements. Absolutely.
Very cool. So just out of curiosity, I don't know if you were a comics reader in the 70s, but did you ever encounter The War That Time Forgot?
No.
It was a series that ran, I think, in Weird War Tales, and it was about a group of World War II soldiers who were fighting dinosaurs on an island in the Pacific where time had stopped. And
right.
Very cool stuff. But dinosaurs are always fun, and that's a big part of your series. And I love the puzzle solving part of that scene in particular. So do you find that gaming, you've mentioned D&D, is that something that influences your writing, or was that something that sort of sparked your interest in writing? Were you a gamer before a writer, or the other way around?
Oh yeah, I was definitely a gamer before a writer. And I think all gamers are, especially if you're the dungeon master or the game master, you're basically a writer, and your players are your characters. So this scene, I kind of wrote it as like an escape room for one of my campaigns that I was running. And I ran my players through it just to see how they would react and if it really played off well, because it's hard to design puzzles that, one leads to a clue that solves another one, and you have that whole cascade of puzzle solving, and it seemed to work, so I threw it into the book. So they were kind of my testing group for that.
Yeah, it's a whole new level of beta reading, or you actually get to test these things out with a live interactive group. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I think there's a lot of, I guess, dinosaurs, they're millions of years in the past and everything, but it's such a lively area of study now. Do you have to do a lot of research? Did you have to keep up from the first book in the series to the second book in the series? Was there new information about dinosaurs that you had to take into account?
Usually there would be. Fortunately, I jumped right into the second book. I was actually out of work for a while because of COVID. And, Severed Press said, can you write a sequel? And I said, yeah, I can write a sequel, because it was released kind of actually right before COVID, December 2019, book one. And they're like, you want to do another one? Because the first one was selling really well. And I'm like, sure. And then all of a sudden I had all this free time. So I wrote the sequel in about 3 months, and it was writing every day for hours and really getting lost in it and throwing scenes of it into my gaming, because I run, a few groups. I run a group, 2 D&D groups. I'm in a Pathfinder group. I'm in all different things. And I'm like, fortunately it was only a few months, so paleontology hadn't shifted that much. Right. But you always have to be on the lookout, because a lot of the information does get outdated very quickly. But, this is a interdimensional island. I can kind of play with it. It doesn't have to be completely accurate because of the properties of the island. So no one's really complained. The biggest complaint I got was putting feathers on one of the T-Rexes, because I'm like, all right, I have T-Rexes. Some paleontologists thought they had feathers, others don't. So I did one of each, because I figure I'd make everybody happy. Well, the ones who didn't like the feathers got a little bit annoyed, and that came up in a couple of the Amazon reviews. Nothing too terrible, but you can never win completely when you're dealing with dinosaurs.
No, everybody's got their favorite, and everybody's got their pet theories.
Yeah, I had to put aquatic dinosaurs in this one because a lot of people said, I like book 1, but I want to see aquatic dinosaurs. And where are the pterodactyls? I want to see pterodactyls. I'm like, all right, I'm taking notes and, giving people what they want.
That's it. Get them all in there. Land,
That's
sea,
right.
and air.
And there's so many, you never run out. So there's plenty for book 3.
Awesome.
Did I just say that?
Do you have a favorite genre? You've written in a lot of different genres, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and I guess these are kind of their own genre, the genre of dinosaur adventure or thriller novels.
I mean, I like them all. It depends on what mood I'm in and what I feel like doing. Because a lot of people are saying, well, what are you going to write next? I don't know. I actually have a few project ideas, and they're from completely different genres. After doing one for a little bit, I kind of have a hankering for another one. So now that I've done, this pulp adventure type subgenre for a while, I kind of want to go back to horror for a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. Summertime, I usually slow down a little bit and, go outside and get some sunlight and fresh air and all that. And then I recede back into my cave in the fall.
Right. Hibernation with a word processor.
Right. But I enjoy them all. It's I was always a big sci-fi, horror, dark fantasy fan. Do I like one more than the other? Not really. I like them all.
Okay. Well, if you're looking for inspiration, Nick wants to see you pen a slick sword and planet story.
In space.
Yes.
And they'll have lycanthropy.
Exactly. Why not? All right. Well, thanks so much for the reading, and we'll have you back on at the end and talk about what's coming up for you, and maybe a little more about that third book. All
cool.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next reader, Sarah Tantlinger, is the author of the Bram Stoker Award-winning The Devil's Dreamland, poetry inspired by H.H. Holmes, and the Stoker-nominated works To Be Devoured, Cradleland of Parasites, and Not All Monsters. Along with being a mentor for the HWA mentorship program, she is also a co-organizer for the HWA Pittsburgh chapter. She embraces all things macabre and can be found lurking in graveyards, or on Twitter at Sarah Tantlinger, at sarahTantlinger.com, and on Instagram at Inky Chaotix. So please join me in welcoming Sarah.
Hello. I'm going to switch it up with some horror poetry. So let me get my paper up here. So first I'm going to read from Cradleland of Parasites. This was nominated for a Stoker this year, which was awesome. And the first poem I'm going to read is called Preventative Measures. So this refers to how in medieval times, how they tried to cure the Black Death, which is what this poetry collection is mostly about. And these are some of the things that they tried to do to cure it, which was very interesting to research. So this is preventative measures. Dissolve opium in brandy. Wear protective amulets beneath the armpit. Smoke tobacco. Eat lettuce. Provide alcohol and opium brews even for the children. Drink fine wine. Pray to God. If feeling ill, take a chicken, pluck it clean, apply live chicken to swollen nodes. Animal will absorb sickness. Repeat until chicken or patient dies. Sit next to hot fire. Sweat out illness. Disease will travel in air to nearest sewage area. For swellings and boils, apply paste of gum resin. Roots of white lilies and dried excrement. You might also seek out ground unicorn horn, crushed emeralds. Do not substitute with mercury or arsenic. That was preventative measures. And those were all based on real things I researched that they tried to do to cure, well, they didn't call it the Black Death then, it was just the plague. So for that plague, they tried to do all these different things. And the next poem kind of refers to I read a lot about how kind of record keepers, you could call them, would go around with the plague doctors, and they would try to journal everything that they saw to try to keep a record of the plague, how many people were dead in certain villages, and things like that. So this was kind of inspired by that idea of someone that had to go along with the plague doctors and take all the notes. And this is called Mecca of Infection. Into the poison land I journey, cloak wrapped tight, leather mask binding my face, fusing lips together, ragged paper and quill in hands, stories staring up at me from haunted faces locked in houses, from mountains of bodies amassed by the docks. No deliverance in the Mecca of infection. No person willing to come forth and tell their story, lest they bring plague back to families sheltered away inside. But still, I write of skies so gray, of rivers stagnant in filth and grime. No birds sing, except the carrion eaters. No bells toll except the ones at dusk, warning of death and burials during starless nights. With careful distance and measured steps, I follow the strange doctors into homes where townspeople writhe. Blood droplets form at the corners of mouths. Pierced boils trickle down sweat-covered arms. I watch, I write, and they die. Repeat, repeat, repeat. It never ends, never stops in the Mecca. Only death thrives, summoning phantoms constantly to cross over souls of the damned persons. And no matter how fast I scribble, I cannot depict the grim horror, the shattering screams of agony, the wretched sight of life leaving a mother's face, a son's body. Liberation from this curse becomes nothing more than a hopeful dream I pen in my journals. Okay, so it's very cheerful. The next one is called Danse Macabre, and if you're a horror writer, we love the word macabre. We use it all the time, and it really gained its traction during medieval times, late medieval times, during the plague, and you really see it reflected in their art. The Dance of Death, the Danse Macabre, refers to just kind of this levelment of both the higher-ups, the royalty, and peasants, and how death came for them all. So in that Dance of Death, they were joined together. So this is Danse Macabre. What you are, we were. What we are, you shall be. The mirror phrase, yes, come tell me, do you know it? Have you heard it? Death will level you, king or servant. Hide in darkness, dance in light. Close your eyes or keep them wide. Death comes silent and unannounced plight. Children hold hands with butchers. Popes bow to laborers. Blacksmiths smile at lords and queens embrace the farmers. All will glide together between fruitless trees where the dead and living come to speak alternately. Look upon us, we skeletons in glassy lake reflections. Search between beauty and terror and bones to find your own skin shimmering back with infections. Dance unites us all through plague, famine, and war. Twirl and sweat until escape taunts you. Just beyond the crimson sand of hell's shore. Do you know it? Have you heard it? Death will level you, king or servant. So that was a couple poems from Cradleland. I'm actually going to read the next one from The Devil's Dreamland, poetry inspired by serial killer H.H. Holmes. This one did win the Stoker, so it's obviously one of my favorites that I've written. This poem, I have two poems in this book that are kind of like H.H. Holmes versus Jack the Ripper, because I hate the theory that H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper were the same person. So I very much wanted to have some poems in this collection that kind of show how they existed at the same time, but they were different people. And I really liked the idea of H.H. Holmes at home in Chicago reading the newspaper about what was happening in London with Jack the Ripper. So this is Holmes versus the Ripper. This is the second part 2 of these companion pieces. So, Dr. Holmes folds down the morning paper, putting away the gooey mess of Jack. The Ripper had been sloppy, sexually exalted by thrusting his hands inside of women, tearing them inside out like a blood-horny animal, savage and visceral. Dr. Holmes straightens the ink on his desk, brushes the lint from his trousers, organizes his files in a slow, neat order. His workers are building, adding new passages, staircase, chambers, chutes, doorways to his home, his workplace, his castle where he envisions beautiful dissections of beautiful women. The Ripper had been sloppy, but Holmes will be precise, careful with his slaughter, his experiments, clean and quiet, the way love and dissections ought to be. And I'm going to read one more from my first collection, which is Love for Slaughter. I call this my horror-mance collection, a little bit of horror, a little bit of romance. This poem is called Crawl to Me. He told me he liked me on my knees, enjoyed watching me crawl across the room and make my way over to where he waited for me to sink my teeth into his naked thighs and suck the blood away until he was dizzy, until he pulled me away, kissed my blood-stained mouth and got off. But this time I kept my lips pressed against him. I bit his tongue, trapped it between my teeth, and shook roughly like a dog with a chew toy. The muscle ripped. I pinched his nose shut and cut off his air. He swallowed down his tongue and choked on the bleeding, squirming worm. I stood up and watched his body twitch on the floor. Violent little shakes of agony as I walk away. I crawl to no one. And that was the last poem that I have for you. Thank you so much.
Such wonderful imagery. Wow, that's really wonderfully creepy. You know, I love it. I love it. So I have to tell you the honest truth. The first anthology, the first novel that I ever edited had H.H. Holmes as a character in it, and I did not know who it was. So as I was reading this book, it's like, what exactly, who are we talking about here? So that's very cool.
Yeah.
What is it that intrigued, I'm going back in time a little bit here, but what is it that intrigued you about Holmes?
So I'd been watching a documentary on H.H. Holmes, and there really isn't like a lot of poetry about serial killers out there, and we don't really,
I don't know why.
Yeah, it's a great market. And we just don't know much about his life. He was such a good liar, and he was such a good con man that it really leaves so much room open for interpretation, which I think attracts us as writers when we can get in there and do what we want with something. And plus, he had a murder castle, so this like creepy place.
The phrase "murder castle," yeah.
So that was
and he went on. He did this for a long time, right?
For a couple years, we think it's so hard to know how many people he actually killed. He lied about so much of it. Even in his own prison memoir, he confessed to killing people who were actually still alive. So he's just someone that we can never figure out. So as a poet, it was very interesting to explore all that.
He's the ultimate unreliable narrator then, I think. Yeah. I'm intrigued by something also. When I first met you, it was at Stoker in 2018, and I thought of you as a poet at that point. We were on a Women in Horror panel and such. And then now you're writing fiction prose as well, which is very cool. How does your brain work going between the two? Do you write these simultaneously? Do you do one thing and stop? How does it work for you?
I usually do one thing at a time, but like with poetry, I can do a poem, something short, and that might take a day or a couple of days. Fiction is such a longer process for me. I love writing prose, but I have to outline, I have to organize. With poetry, I can do it a lot more organically, just sit there and think and maybe do some research. I can't do that with fiction. I can't be a pantser. It doesn't work well for me. I've tried. So definitely have to be way more on top of what I'm doing with fiction.
Oh, and plan ahead a little bit. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we have an excellent question from Haley that follows up. How do you decide what to focus a poetry book on? Like noticing a pattern in poems you're writing, or deciding beforehand, or some other way? Do you write them separately and then collect them, or do you write them all for a particular collection or book?
So far, with all three of mine, I've always had the idea of the theme first. Sometimes, like with Love for Slaughter, this one,
Yeah.
that one was just kind of, that came together a bit more because I had a bunch of pieces that were kind of fitting this horror romance idea. So then once I realized that, that took off, and I just went with it and made more for it. But with Homes and Cradleland of Parasites, I definitely had that theme first. And then just tried to put it together and do different things, play with some rhyme. I don't rhyme a whole lot, so I try to challenge myself to rhyme a little bit more every now and then. Yeah.
Well, we do have a rather amusing comment from Nicholas Dyack, who says, I bet the real estate agent in Lara's story could sell J.J. Holmes's murder house. That
Be a
could
good pairing.
yeah, just don't open that closet door. Yeah. Well, I have another question for you. With Mecca of Infection, this came out in spring of the end of the pandemic, basically. And there's the stories about the plague doctors and plague. Was it inspired by the pandemic, or did it just happen at the same time?
It just happened at the same time, which was awesome as a writer. Yeah, no, I proposed the idea to this book to my publisher in 2019, and I had been working on it, and then I had to get it done. And then the pandemic came like right around the time when I was finishing most of the pieces. So it did play into some ideas for some of the final pieces that I had, but mostly it was just unlucky timing, or I'm a prophet and I don't want to be, or something.
Yes, one did not want to predict that. I understand. No. Yeah. Do you include poems in your prose?
I haven't mixed them too much yet. I really like, Linda Addison has a great collection. I think she read from it when she was on Galactic Terrors, where she has a poem, a story. So I might do something like that someday. I think it's really a nice reading experience too when you're into both.
Yeah, that's a nice way to break it up. As long as you don't do the Tolkien thing and have extensive references to Tom Bombadil and take us totally off track for a while. Yeah.
Maybe.
But that's fun too. Yeah, that's cool. Have you ever been interested in doing songs? With your beautiful poetry, the imagery in there, is that anything that would be interesting for you?
Maybe if someone else wanted to come sing it for me, sure. I think poetry is very lyrical in nature. I think a lot of poets and lyricists probably blend together. I can't sing. I wouldn't subject anyone to that horror, but I would definitely write lyrics.
Okay, that's fair. And then I have another question for you, the same kind of thing. What do you like better when you're consuming poetry? Do you like to read it on the paper with your own timing, or do you like to listen to it better?
I really like to read it for myself. I don't do a ton of audiobooks. My brain just doesn't work well that way. I'd have to have something to read with it. But I love listening to people do readings at events and stuff, or like on videos like this. When I can see them reading it, that helps a lot, for sure.
Yeah, that helps. And I discovered a trick. I was reading a lot of Shakespeare recently, and I've discovered if you get an audio recording done by actors, especially with different people doing the different voices, and you read it on the paper at the same time, that works really, really well to help you understand what the Shakespearean dialogue was all about, because otherwise a lot of it goes right over the head and you have to stop and look things up. But if they've already done that work, so I kind of liked that.
No, that sounds really good. And like going to see a Shakespeare play is such a different experience than just trying to read it when you can have those voices and those characters. It's so amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm just delighted that you've come on to read some of your stuff for us, because it really is, it's even more fun to hear you read the words yourself. Well, thank you so much. We're going to ask you to come back at the end after we have Lou's really cool video thing coming up. So I want to hear more about what's coming up next for you. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to introduce Lou Rara. He writes horror, supernatural crime, and subjects that delve into the darker side of humanity. He's the author of Awake, Tales of Terror, a collection of 13 short stories that came out in 2020, and Sign, a supernatural thriller of deception and murder. from 2014. He's an active member of the Horror Writers Association, the Just Buffalo Literary Center, and IMDb. His collection of flash fiction, There Are No Doors on a Cocoon, was published in 2008. Lou writes occasional reviews for Horror Novel Reviews. Thanks. Let's welcome Lou Rara. Now, Lou has done a very interesting and special presentation for us. Instead of him reading live, he's used his tremendous skills to create something wonderful for us. Let's all enjoy it together.
This read is from my collection, Awake, Tales of Terror. This is an excerpt from the title story, Awake. I first came to understand the details of my brother's situation from a letter he wrote to me while he was awaiting transfer to Attica State Prison. The letter outlines in Rudy's own words what led to the murder. His letter is brief but chilling. Dear Jonathan, I'm in prison because I murdered that guy. Insomnia had a lot to do with it, and between you and I, we both know it was Father's fault as well. He told me to kill Cameron McKay. If I'd been a normal person, I would have reacted to the events in a rational manner. I'm not, and I didn't. God, I've tried to kick this insomnia thing. I've taken pills, tried meditation, drank till I passed out, which, by the way, is not the same as sleeping. I wallow in a kind of Bill Murray Groundhog Day redundancy. The same thing over and over and over. I hope this letter helps you see that I'm not a maniac, but someone who feared for his life. Maybe it will shed light on why on earth I managed to murder a stranger who showed up at our door on that frigid January night. What happened that night was brought on by several factors, all of which were beyond my control. Our dead father had a lot to do with it. I know you won't believe me, but he whispered in my ear over and over, "Kill him before he kills you. Kill him, Rudy. Kill him." It was almost like a nursery rhyme, Jonathan. He was like a cheerleader of death, egging me on to kill the stranger in our house. Before that, I was home alone. I didn't ask to be disturbed. The knock on the door scared the hell out of me. It was well after 3 a.m., and several things occurred to me in a millisecond. A heavy snowfall left another 3 feet of snow on the hills. It was 5 degrees below zero, the winds were howling, and somebody was outside, pounding on our door. I don't need to remind you how remote it is out here. When the stranger knocked on the door, the only light in the house was coming from the TV. I grabbed the remote and flicked it off. I didn't move from the couch. As I bit one of my nails, I could hear the ticking of my wristwatch. I was hoping he hadn't seen the glow of our TV and would just go away. The next knock was forceful, angry, like someone pounding on a dorm room wall because the music was too loud. As the wind howled, I started to get nervous. It can be a weird feeling at times living out there, especially when you're not around. In the dark, I walked into the kitchen. "Can I help you?" I yelled through the door. All I could see was a dim silhouette of a man's head. The wind whipped his hair around like a hairdryer. "My car died," he said. "Can you help me?" I said, "Did you try AAA?" As soon as those words passed my lips, I regretted saying them. I sounded like a ridiculous fool, or someone who was afraid of anybody at my door. Without a moment's hesitation, I said, of course, come in. Then I blurted out, like a horror movie cliche, "I suppose you'd like to use my phone." "There's no cell service up here," he answered. I thought his answer was cliche too. Then he did the first of many strange things over the next hour. He held out his phone and rocked it back and forth, making a tick-tock sound with his tongue, clicking it against the roof of his mouth. I found his action to be pointless and insane. This unnerved me. You tell me all the time I watch too many horror movies, and maybe you're right. But I knew right then and there, this guy was odd. You can use my phone, it's right there on the wall near the door. Who should I call? It's 3 a.m, he said. Well, what do you want then? He wanted to stay here. Stay for the rest of the night in our house. He was initially pleasant and polite. For a moment he was even jovial. I offered him a warm mug of milk. He mentioned his wife did the same thing for him, but with a plate of Oreos. You do have Oreos to go with my milk, correct? He asked, but kind of demanded. I thought it odd, but people like what they like. Warm milk always relaxes me. As the minutes wore on, he grew increasingly erratic. Sometimes I rubbed the Oreos on my stomach before I eat them, you know, to let my tummy know a good thing is about to happen, he said. What do you mean? I asked. My wife does that. She splits the Oreos open, then rubs the 2 halves on my belly while she sings, through the teeth, past the gums, look out stomach, here it comes. I knew without a doubt he was insane, and here I was, stuck with this lunatic, trapped by a snowstorm in our house after 3 a.m. He continued to taunt me in ways that made him seem dangerous. There was no way I would let him sleep in your room, and I figured the couch near the sliding patio doors was the most prudent. After we'd gone to bed, I heard noises that sounded like a man pulling knives from a butcher block on the counter. At that hour, ask yourself, Jonathan, why would someone be rummaging around in the cutlery? My thoughts exactly. During my interview with the police, I reported that I distinctly heard metal against metal. I feared, no, actually, I was terrified he was plotting to enter my room with a serrated bread knife and rip it across my throat. I imagined him cutting across my windpipe, then standing there, head tilted like a curious dog, listening to the gurgling sounds of your loving brother as I bled out. My mouth would be in a silent scream, opening and closing like a panicked fish gasping for water. If he decided to use the meat cleaver instead, he could have split my skull. Have you ever read the wiki pages about Lizzie Borden, Jonathan? That was one hell of a holy mess. I decided I'd prevent my guest from a first strike. I was the stealthy one. Before he made any noise at all, I had tiptoed over to my junk closet. I knew exactly what I wanted. I found my baseball bat. Remember that bat, Jonathan? The one Father gave me? I thought about his attitude and his insane, almost fetish attraction to Oreos. He wanted them rubbed on his stomach. From the very moment he walked in the door, I had this weird feeling he intended on killing me. The first slam with the bat ended it. I hit him so hard his head caved in like a melon on a sidewalk. I thought he had tried to say something as life oozed out of his crushed skull, but that was just the bubbling sound of air and blood. The police report stated that I bludgeoned him as he slept. That part is not true. He didn't hear me come up behind him until at the last moment. He tipped his head back and raised his eyes to meet mine. By then, I had the bat over my head with no intention of merely knocking him out. He was going to kill me, Jonathan, and I bashed his brains in. Right the fuck in. Father would be proud of me, Jonathan. Remember how he taught us not to be anyone's fool? How he showed us never to trust anyone? And to always, yes, always get the upper hand. I heard his voice that night. He whispered in my ear and gave me the okay to do what I was going to do anyway. Between you and me, the facts couldn't be clearer. Based on the odd way my surprise guest conducted himself, I was terrified for my life. Think of all the events that need to happen to put you in a situation where you'd be so terrified that you'd murder someone. You'd think the chances of something like that would be astronomical. Of course, you, like most people, would say it would be morally and ethically impossible, based on everything we hold to be true, to murder another human being. Right? It sounds crazy, but it happens every day somewhere on this planet. One person destroys himself forever by killing another person. It happened to me, Jonathan. I murdered Cameron McKay because he rubbed Oreos on his naked belly sometime after 3 a.m. during a blinding snowstorm.
Lou, hello.
Hey.
Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
It's just that gets under my skin. The whole thing is just brilliant and really, really well made. And thank you for putting that together and sharing
sure.
it with us on Galactic Terrors. So what is it exactly that you have against Oreos, and how long have you hated those cookies? No.
No, I actually love Oreos, but I just like the idea of taking something that would be sort of looked at as a quirky fetish, a bizarre thing that some guy does, and then going the other way and having them slaughtered because of it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I hope you don't mind me saying, but the story is very reminiscent of sort of an Edgar Allan Poe story, where there's a little bit of madness on all the on both characters' parts, and it leads to this tragic, horrific outcome.
Yeah, I think, the protagonist, I hope it came across, but he's insane by himself all the way out in the middle of nowhere with no interaction with anybody. All it would take was anyone coming to his place for the trouble to begin. So he's a defective human being, and he belongs way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And then you definitely get that sense of isolation, not only from the story and your reading of it, but from the video, from the imagery. It really is effective and haunting. So when you wrote this story, did you see images like that in your imagination, or did you come to the imagery after the story was written?
Well, obviously I did it afterwards, but I write visually. I tend to think things through of how they would look. For instance, in a setup I had once where a husband and wife were stranded out in the middle of nowhere in the summertime during a full moon, and about a quarter mile up the road, there's somebody standing there looking at them with no place that the guy could have come from. Mm-hmm. So it's like that. It's like, what situations can you imagine, and how would that make you feel? I actually would do that. I would drive out in the middle of nowhere during a full moon for months at a time to get that feeling, what that experience is like. So with this piece, I didn't want it to be obviously a literal translation of the visuals, but sort of like, in the mind of this guy, how he sees another lunatic, sort of, but not in a realistic way, in a mind's eye way.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think you've really got another level there, whether it was intended or not, because the story is couched in the letter to the brother.
Right.
So in a sense, we could look at this and think this is what the brother is seeing as he reads the letter.
Right. Because he knows his brother, and he knows his brother's not quite right. And and he keeps referring back and forth, like, remember, Jonathan, this is how you said you would do this, or how I would do this. Mm-hmm. So he's definitely playing with the relationship with his brother, for sure.
Which is fascinating. And there's a surprising number of people commenting that they now want Oreos. And our most controversial Oreo comment is from Nicholas Dyack, whose assertion is that they are only good when they are in something and not by themselves. Oh, geez.
Yes.
All right, well, we'll let you hang out with us anyway, Nick. Do you have a preference for, or is it sort of whatever works for the story, visual storytelling or prose? Because they're very different. The way you convey a story in images in like a film like that, or in words.
I come from a visual background. Design was my career for many years, working in television and film, and I just always looked at things from a visual perspective. Now, writing it in prose is much more difficult because you have to strip away a lot of the things that you assume people know, and define it in a way that they can understand from the prose. But I absolutely see things in a visual way, always.
So there's always sort of like the movie version of the story that plays in your mind.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I wrote a story for that collection where a guy wanted to experiment by burying himself in a cemetery because he was fascinated with the idea that the roots of all these 100-year-old trees in the cemetery were intertwined with all the graves. So behind my house, there's a 200-year-old cemetery that I walk in all the time. And that idea came to me when I was walking through and seeing these headstones sort of upheavaled by roots of trees. So from there, the story kind of comes to me that way. So yeah, it's definitely linked in the visual side of things.
What was the title of that story? I remember reading that one, and it has an equally creepy and atmospheric tone.
Yeah, you would ask me that. Okay.
Well, we can come back to that if you.
Sure. No. Let's see. The cemetery.
Oh, there we go. Very, very on the nose. Okay.
Yeah.
And just maybe in a few words, can you describe the collection, Awake?
The collection is really a cross section of different experiences by everyday people. I like to look at things that way, where a guy works at a restaurant and something unique happens to that guy. And I know a lot of writers do this. What is it? The Joseph Campbell way of looking at the hero myth, right? Where you're a normal person like everybody else, but something happens, you leave and come back changed forever. And my stories aren't that deep. I'm just trying to say that I like to write stories about people that are just like you and me, and but all of a sudden something odd happens to them. Mm-hmm. For instance, one story in this collection is about a guy he lost his job and he's forced to be a clown at kids' birthday parties. And he finally loses it. He snaps because he sees a kid picking his nose in the corner, and he focuses on a fly trapped in a window in a screen. And that does it, and the parents throw him out and his life starts to unspiral there. So I just look for the everyday, the what people might react, and then push it a little bit farther.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and you do it very well.
Thanks.
So yeah, thank you again for putting that together for Galactic Terrors. And
sure.
And of course, thank you for all you do to help us each month with the video intros and design work, and it's much appreciated.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. Thanks.
All right. And I think we'll bring the rest of our group on tonight for some catch up on what people have coming up next and other last words. So let's welcome back Carol, and we'll bring Rick, Lara, and Sarah. So anybody here looking forward to some Oreos after we sign off tonight?
Wow, I don't know if you want to eat them or wear them. It's hard to tell. I just want to say I am so amazed by the combination and the breadth of what we had tonight. Very cool. We started with a humorous, creepy, awful house thing. We had dark dinosaur adventure. Sarah took us through the plague and H.H. Holmes, and then Lou took us out in the weirdest places we can imagine of everything that seemed normal but really wasn't. It's like, wow, what a great combo. You'd think we planned this or something, Jim.
Yeah, exactly. We did, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
No, it worked out beautifully. I mean, we're pretty much very laid back about what our readers on Galactic Terrors choose to read, and it's really up to them. And it tends to work out this way, where things are kind of a great variety or complementary more often than not, which is nice. So, but yeah, this was great. Thank you all for your readings. There was, Sarah, I wanted to ask you just very briefly. I'm blanking on the title of it now, but have you read the Robert Bloch novel about H.H. Holmes?
American Gothic, yeah.
Thank you, American Gothic.
It's
I was
so
thinking
good.
American Psycho, but I knew it wasn't that. So, yeah, he's a fascinating historical figure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's terrific.
I enjoyed everybody's reads and meeting everyone tonight. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for everybody.
I had a great time.
So what does everyone have coming up in the near future or even the distant future, if you can talk about it? And maybe we'll just go back around in our reading order and start with Lara.
So I'm still working on the novel about the demonic bugs. Also hoping, I have a lot of short stories I'm working on, so I'm hoping to get some of them out.
Lara, do you have a book event coming up?
Yes. And I do have an essay coming out. It's in Once Upon a Time in Kew Gardens. It's not a horror thing. It's just an essay about when I was a teenager and dealing with and being in Kew Gardens. So it's only available at Kew and Willow Bookstore. So if you want to buy it, that's the only way to get it, is to buy it from that bookstore. I think it's limited. They're going to limit it to the bookstore, and then they're going to do wide release.
And it's really great to support a small bookstore, an independent bookstore.
Yes,
So
I do recommend that anyone who's in the New York area to go to Kew and Willow Bookstore in Kew Gardens. Your cute little bookshop.
Excellent. Thanks for the recommendation.
Cool.
All right, Rick, what have you got coming up? Can you actually say anything about the?
Not really. It's possible. It's I'm not sure. There's a couple of potential projects. I'm probably going to take the summer, just kind of recharge, and then in the fall start, choose something and start running with it. I've even considered returning to short stories again because I haven't done that in a while. So we'll see.
Cool.
Yeah.
And they may or may not be dinosaur stories, right?
Right. It could be about anything, right?
Yes. Or do you have news of yet another language that your stories are going to be translated into?
So far, just German.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Yeah, German dinosaurs. Yeah. How about you, Sarah? Do you have stuff you can tell us about that's coming up?
Oh, there's a lot of stuff I can't talk about yet, but
That's good.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this yet, but one thing is planning a very big horror HWA related event in 2023. So I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that yet, but
yeah,
keep an eye on that. And then the thing I can talk about, if you are a lady in horror, in August, I am editing an anthology called Chromophobia. And it is stories inspired by colors, the fear of color, scary pastels and watercolors. Again, it's a women in horror anthology. So if you have any stories or are working on any stories for me, that opens August 1st. You can find all the submission details on my social media on the publishing page, and it's out there everywhere. If you can't find it, let me know. I'll get it to you. I am so excited for this anthology. It'll be my second time editing an anthology, and I think it's going to be a beautiful, stunning, unique book. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, I am way excited. And I'm trying to think of things that are not red or black,
Yes. I'm happy to read 100 stories about the color red, but something different's probably going to get my attention.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. And I just put your social media back in the chat again for anybody who's looking for their specific call. Cool. Yeah, we've been sharing stuff all along. Yeah. And Mr. Rera, what do you have in the world of new things up and coming?
Well, unrelated to writing, in a couple of weeks, I'm driving down to see somewhere in Pennsylvania, Joe Bob Briggs in The Last Drive-In is at a drive-in somewhere. And in October, unrelated to writing, I'm in a band playing bass for the musical Hair for 4 weeks.
Wow. No, don't go on yet. Tell me about that. Where?
It's at a place, East Aurora Players, and it's in Western New York. And the show runs for a month. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we start rehearsals in August and doing that. So that's going to be some fun. And I would like to go to the New York Comic Con if that comes together. It's supposed to be I think in mid-October as well.
It's supposed to be happening live. I don't know all the details, and I think things may well be changing as they go along. But yeah.
It is. I think October 7th or thereabouts. And
Mhm.
check their website. I believe tickets go on sale to the general public on July 11th, so that's coming right up.
Cool.
Mhm.
But
Awesome.
yeah, they are going to do it. I just don't know if it's going to look like the usual
Yeah.
You know,
They're supposed
city
to
within a city
limit.
size event. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lou,
I
please
think-
take me with you to see Joe Bob.
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be fun, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I just want to say I have a pretty big car. We can do a road trip from here in the New York area up there because I grew up in Buffalo, Utica, and Syracuse, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
A hair road trip. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
All
Yeah.
right. So
No,
then,
that's
just a quick reminder: if you're in the New York area, feel free to drop by and join us at the Ample Hills Creamery in Gowanus for next month's rooftop reading. As we discussed earlier, Carol will be reading. I'll be guest hosting, and we'll be featuring Under Twin Suns, the an anthology of alternate histories of the Yellow Sign. And we hope that you will join us for Galactic Terrors in the future. We put this on every second Thursday of the month. And as we mentioned earlier on, you can always click subscribe to below on YouTube to follow future Galactic Terrors transmissions or sign up for our newsletter.
Mhm.
And we'll be doing our next broadcast on August 12th. Very excited. We have a great roster of readers already lined up. Elizabeth Crowens, Randy Dawn, Trevor Firetog, and Cynthia Paleo. So we hope to see you here for that. It's going to be another great session.
Mhm.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm very excited. Yeah, it's going to be
Awesome.
terrific.
Yeah.
So thank you for everybody who came, and please tell your friends as well. This is a live broadcast right now, but it's going to be on our Galactic Terrors YouTube channel, and people can watch it afterward. We actually find four or five words, Carol, words. Four
Words are
or
hard.
5 times as many people watch the recordings because maybe they're busy on Thursdays.
Yeah.
So tell all your friends, and
Cool.
just as an additional thought, if you haven't done so yet, we'd be delighted to have you subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video because that gets us shown more places with, algorithms and things.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very good. Yes.
All right.
And I know I'll be tuning in again to watch that video from Lou another time.
Yeah, terrific.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this has been great. Thanks so much for joining
Right.
us. Good luck with everyone with your many projects and your writing work. And hopefully we'll see you again on Galactic Terrors.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.